Good God, this one's floppy. Oh my God, Jesus. Okay, and with thus we commence episode 4 of Things That Go Bump. Jesus, this is gonna burn me. Oh my God, why is it so thin? Oh my God, now it won't go in. Oh Jesus, I need to stop talking. I need to stop talking. For all my audio listeners, I realize that I only address the video watchers and not the audio listeners. For all the audio listeners, I was just lighting my incense of the episode, and it is so thin, and it would not go in my incense tray, and it was going to burn me. It was burning so fast. Oh my God, this one's probably going to go out before the episode's even over. How lame. Anyways, it's whatever. Squeaky desk, it's still squeaky. Okay. Welcome back to Things That Go Bump. I am your host, Zaebian, and this is my weekly review podcast of the original 62 books in R.L. Stine's Goosebumps series. And that's what we're doing here today. Oh, I didn't even grab the book of the week. Don't look. You can read the title. Don't look. It's a surprise, guys. Don't fucking look at it. Anyways. All right. So as per usual, this is the chaos of the day. I'm wearing my Greta Gerwig shirt that I purchased after watching the Barbie movie. Are you kidding? Y'all are not ready to talk about the Barbie movie. I love Greta Gerwig so much. She is absolutely my favorite director. She has been since Lady Bird came out, and I watched it for the first time. And I love her. That's all I'm going to say about Greta Gerwig today. Anyways, moving on to let's do some housekeeping, guys. It's been a minute. Some things have happened, and I would like to tell you about them. I want to tell you about things that I want to talk about, and then we'll get into the reason that you're here. It's kind of like the economy and just society. I want to tell you about what I want to tell you, and then you can do what you want to do. Anywho, so first order of housekeeping. I'm sorry that I feel like the quality of the last video was really bad. I think there was something going on with my professional like tent. You know those lights that have like tents over them in professional recording studios? That's what was going on over here, except that light in my studio is just a desk lamp. So I don't know. I think there was something going on with lighting or something. I feel like the quality was kind of bad. So if you noticed that, sorry. If you didn't, I'm a professional. Next on the list. Oh, I got my nails done since the last time I saw you. We have this little sparkly red moment because in my recording time, this is coming out the week before Halloween. So in my recording time, it's not Halloween time yet. It is late September. And I didn't want to get something that is like my bougie Halloween nails, but I did want something Halloween-esque. And this is kind of like sparkly blood nails. Number 42, sparkly blood nails. Anyways, you don't care. I went to a Renaissance festival in Minneapolis, Minnesota this past weekend, and oh my God, it was pretty fun. I normally go to one in Wisconsin, but this year we decided to spice it up and go to a new one. It was my first time in Minneapolis, too. We spent the weekend there with my friend's family. Lovely bunch of people. I would love to live in the suburb that they live in because it was very nice, and I loved it. But yeah, the Ren Fair was fun. It had its pros and cons. The joust there fucking sucked. However, they had dog races that were pretty fun. They had mead. I tried mead for the first time, which if you don't know, it's basically wine, but instead of fruit, it's fermented with honey. So it's really sweet and delicious. And ooh, so good. Loved it. Okay, guys, moving on. I don't want to talk about the Ren Fair really. It's over. I'm over it. It's done. I don't want to talk about it anymore. we're just moving forward. I love Renaissance. I will talk about medieval times for about 40 minutes. But the Ren Fair, it's over in my brain. I was looking forward to it. It's over. And now we move on to another very important matter of business that kind of piggybacks off of something I talked about in episode 2. I don't think I talked about it much last week. But while I was in Minneapolis, I was reinvigorated, re-inspired by some teenagers at Barnes and Noble to start reading more, and not just reading children's literature for a podcast, maybe reading something that's been sitting on my nightstand for about 2 months that I need to read, or something, a continuation of a series that I love. I finally got myself into A Court of Wings and Ruin. Okay, so I read chapter 1 like a minute ago after I finished Mist and Fury, and I talked about this in episode 2. I was so pissed about how that book ended, and I didn't want to read what would happen because I was just so pissed, and I wanted to just relive book 2, but I forced myself to start book 3. I'm about 100 pages in, so no spoilers. I hope that by the time this comes out in a month, I will have finished the book, but no spoilers. Nonetheless, if you comment a spoiler in any form, I will be pissed at you, because maybe other people haven't read the book yet. Okay? Maybe other people haven't read the book yet, and they haven't met my favorite, my love of my life. Okay, I've also been informed that apparently his name is pronounced Rezand. I think that's stupid, so I'm calling him Reason. That's what I want to call him, and it's Timothy Chalamet in my brain, and I just kick my little feet. I think I turned my microphone off. I got so excited about Timothy Chalamet. Anyways. Don't fucking talk to me, guys. Lastly, let's move. I have to move on from ACOTAR talk. That's not what we're here to talk about today, but there is one more order of housekeeping, and that is... So I've mentioned before that I love the paranormal, I love witchcraft, things like that. So I obviously very much believe in the paranormal and ghosts and things like that. I've gone ghost hunting a few times in my life, and I love all of that shit, and I feel like it's now very appropriate for me to inform you that there is absolutely a ghost in my house, and I've just never talked about it to you before, but now something happened yesterday, and it's like shit has just been happening over and over again, and I want to document the things that happen in some way, because it's all been within the last like month and a half that shit has been like kind of kicking up for me personally. So I thought I would make like a point every housekeeping segment of the episodes to just kind of maybe inform you of things that have happened with the ghost in my house since the last time I saw you. So it's kind of, just to recap generally, it's a lot of like weird noises. Like I'll be up here in my room on the second story of my house, and I will be able to hear from my like kind of Four Seasons porch that wraps around the side of my house downstairs. I'll be able to hear like really loud banging sounds that sounds like someone's almost dropping a heavy box. Mind you, I do have cats and dogs, and they do have the potential to like knock shit over, but surprise, surprise, we don't really have anything out there that would make a sound like that if it were knocked over. And then you go down there and nothing's out of place. So like, of course, that's pretty fucking freaky. That's been happening for a long time. And then it's just kind of like a general, like, I'm very susceptible to just feeling energy around me, so I can always just kind of feel like there'll be random moments where I'm just minding my own business, and then suddenly like my brain just like, I feel like a dog. I feel like a dog when he sees a squirrel. My dog Jude, when he sees a squirrel or a rabbit, he just like goes into like, my brain is turned off on everything around me except the squirrel. That's how my brain goes at random points in my day, but I would just feel someone standing behind me looking at me. Really freaky. And that happens a lot too. That's mostly what it is. Or I'll enter a room and be like, oh, it's in here today. Oh, it's hiding in my mom's closet today because she reorganized her room. And It's a lot. I have to cleanse my room more often than I would like to because I don't want it to come in here. And I've been having really weird dreams lately. And this past like summer was just so bad. And my emotions and my like mental health were so bad. So I think it was really feeding off of that. And it has been kicking up and affecting me more since this past summer. But anyways, so more recently, what are some things that have happened? I would love to share this with you. Do I want to share? There's something that happened that was kind of personal, but basically I put a very like personal object to me in from my vehicle to my room because just for more like safekeeping. And I decided to put that on my altar over here. Okay, so I'll say it was an image. It was like two very personal things. It was an image and then something that corresponds with that image. And it wasn't propped up or anything. It was just laying flat down. As you can see on my altar, it's just like a flat top it's a chest with a flat top on it for my audio listeners. Like a wooden chest with just a flat piece of wood lid on it. And it has like other things set atop of it, candles and things like that. But there's a big open space, so I put this picture and the thing that goes with it over the top of it, kind of. And then I also, at the other end of the picture, placed a crystal that's sitting on the altar on top of it so that it wouldn't like move around or anything. And I did that like a week or two ago. And that's after I've been so worried that keeping it in my car since this summer it would fly out the window or something. And it never did. It's never gone anywhere. It's always been very weirdly like in its place. Which also makes it kind of it lasted in the car but not in my house because now I keep thinking about it and it's scaring me. But so I had the picture there. It was there for maybe like a week or two, like I said. And then I went to Minneapolis this past weekend and I come home. Nothing in my room is like disarrayed or anything like that. Nothing's been moved. My mom was in here a few times because I have a fish tank off camera that you can't see, so she was taking care of my fish while I was gone. But like nothing was moved around or anything. Whatever. I get in my room the next morning after I come back here. I am looking in my altar space to put something away. The picture and the corresponding object with the picture are gone. Now, of course, I just mentioned that I have pets. So you'd be like, okay, your pets took it, your cats took it, your dog took it, whatever. Nothing else on the altar is moved or disarrayed or bothered at all. It is so fucking terrifying to me, guys. Like even the crystal that I had on top of this picture was not moved. Just the picture and its corresponding object are gone. I have no idea where they are. My dog Jude is prone to like shredding paper and things like that, but we always find it because he always does it in like on a chair or something. So we always find it. And if he took them, everything on that shelf, because it's like it would be moved around. You'd be able to see that he probably took it, but that is not the case. And B, we would have found the remains if he chewed them all apart. So that's kind of fucking weird, right? That's kind of fucking weird. I don't even want to like I have to cleanse my room when I'm done recording because now I'm freaked out. But that's my update with the ghost in my house. It has probably been like fucking 20 minutes now of me recording nothing. And we haven't even gotten into the meat of the episode, why you're here today. This is a Goosebumps review podcast. But that's a fun little segment. If you like the segment, let me know and I'll keep doing it. I'm going to keep doing it anyways because I'm recording this far before it's going to be coming out and I won't be able to see your comments as I record it. But I'm going to keep doing it anyway, so I hope you like it. We're moving on to the meat of the episode, why we are all gathered here today. It's time to review another Goosebumps book. We're moving forward with my series. As I stated last time, this is now officially the first episode of content I'm making for this series, specifically for the pod. All of the other books and all the other episodes I've made so far have been about reviews that I have already made maybe like a year ago or less. for my TikTok series. But now these are all exclusively, you are hearing the numbers and my reviews and my thoughts for the very first time on this podcast, not on TikTok. So I think that is so exciting. And we're kicking it off with an underrated banger, a sleeper hit in the Goosebumps series, if you will. This is number 43 in the original Goosebumps series, so we're not moving far back in time. The last book, I believe, was number 49. This is The Beast from the East. This, like I said, it is a sleeper hit, you guys. And also, this is the last of the few books that I got from a family member. So I know I have like, I saw this when she gave it to me and I was like, this was on my bookshelf as a kid. I never read this book, but this was on my bookshelf. I know it was for a fact. Like, this is the exact copy that I owned as a child. And I wished I read this as a kid because this book was like crazy. This book was so weird. It was so like, it was like a typical Goosebumps plot. Like, I don't know why I didn't expect it to be this way, but it was also so different at the same time. I don't think there was ever a TV episode made of this, but I really wish there was. I think that would have been really cool. But basically, let's start with a synopsis of The Beast from the East. So this girl, who's like a 12-year-old girl named Ginger, and her twin brothers, Nat and Pat, stupid, of course, identical twin brothers have rhyming names. They go on a camping trip with their parents, which we'll get into their parents later, and immediately they get lost in the woods. Like, not like just the children, they all get lost in the woods and they're running around trying to find their mom and dad, and then they find themselves in another world. Basically, like, the forest turns into a weird jungle with like magical creatures and weird plants and shit like that, and they run into these giant beasts who they find out can talk and force them into playing this game. What's the name of the game? We literally don't know, but it's basically a game of tag with a bunch of weird fucking rules that they learn as they go along and play this game. And if they don't win the game by the end of the day, by the time the sun sets, they get eaten by the beasts. How fucking horrifying is that? Anyways, that's the brief synopsis. Don't want to give away too much. There's a lot of details in this book that I'm going to talk about today, and I'm very excited about that. But first, I need some coffee. Oh my god, I'm parched. Twink. Okay. Jesus, this incense is making a mess. I love Wildberry, but sometimes they don't pop their pussy like they should. Anyways, moving on to the review. Let's start for a minute of talking with let's start by talking about Miss Ginger. Miss Ginger, in short, she's not on the same tier as Carly Beth, but she is not my favorite protagonist. She is a gaslighter and she is fucking annoying. She just like lies to herself and in turn lies to other people. For example, when she initially gets lost with her brothers in the woods, she just like lies to them and says like, yeah, this is the way back to mom and dad. She's like, yeah, we're not gonna get lost. We'll get out of the magical forest. Like, she just consistently lies to them. There's even a part where they see the beasts for the first time and they're like, she's like, no, they aren't. These 8-foot tall creatures aren't going to run faster than us. No way. Nope. She's just stupid. She's so stupid. She's such a liar. And then she gets like snarky with her brothers. And meanwhile, her brothers are like 10 years old. And one of them, Nat, is a fucking girl boss. I loved him so much. He's so innovative. He's able to like climb really tall trees and shit. So he's able to actually be like helpful too. And he's also just a problem solver. He is the one that comes up with like actual like, let's figure out what to do to get out of here. Ginger's very much just like, let's get out of here. And he's like, but how? Let's figure out how we get out of here. And he just better work. Meanwhile, Pat, his twin brother, is a fucking runaway piss bitch. As soon, like, As soon as they get in the forest and see these beasts, he bolts and he is basically gone for the entire fucking book. It is so okay. It seems so stupid at points, but by the end of the book, it ends up being very important that he disappears for the whole book. But it just seems so unnecessary for the whole thing. And the whole time I was like, is he dead? Did he get eaten? Like, where did he go? Like, did he actually make it back? It seems like such a pointless character. It's not in the end, but, so dumb. And like, okay, so like Ginger tries to just keep her brothers calm and tries to figure out rational solutions, but she's a liar and she's annoying because she's a 12-year-old girl. But I also can't completely blame her because in the very beginning of the book, the parents are mentioned in maybe the first 2 chapters, period. As far as like we see their characters for 2 chapters in the book. And in those 2 chapters, in the first like 10 pages of this book, it is established that this family is so toxic. They have a horrible family dynamic. There's like, when they're hiking in the woods, it's talking about how the mom tries to like be positive and she's pointing out like, oh, there's a chipmunk, like, oh, it's fun out here. And the dad is just a fucking grump and is like yelling at the kids all the time. And even in the first chapter, it talks about how it's like very glossed over. So like, this is one of the things in this book. There was so much to actually like read into that felt like, that was like, wait, what? What? Was that intentional, or is this just like me, a former English major, overanalyzing shit to the point that wasn't even intentional? Because that's what you do as an English major. You overanalyze the fuck out of every single detail in a book and convince yourself that it's important. But that's what I did here. There was so much in this book that I was like, what the fuck was that? And this was one of them. In the first chapter, Ginger talks about how when she was like a kid, like younger, her parents would come into her room and tell her goodnight separately. It talked about how her mom would tell her goodnight and then her dad would come in and like read her a story or something. What is that? That is a toxic family household. That is a marriage that should be broken up. Those are parents that do not want to be sleeping together anymore. Like, oh my God, it was so weird. And like, they obviously like, okay, the mom seems better because she's the positive one, but neither of them really care to look too hard for their children. Because they are more so like, they lose Nat instantly when they are walking to this campsite or whatever, and the dad, when they all arrive to their campsite, the dad jokingly tells Ginger, hey, go lose your brothers in the woods. About 10-year-old children to a 12-year-old girl. Like, unhinged. This guy is on drugs. Who says that to a child? Maybe I just resonated with that because I also had a horrible father, but like, good God, that is intense. And like, I don't know. And it's just because he's annoyed with them too. Like, it was so fucking strange. Those little details that we find out about them in a chapter or 2 was crazy. And Ginger also talks, for some reason, she talks about bears a lot. And like a few times, mostly in the first half of the book. And at different points, she compares her dad and the beasts that they encounter to bears, in the fact that they, like, when she talks about the beast, she's like, oh my God, that one's eating a vegetable. Maybe they're not going to eat human kids because maybe they don't eat meat. And then she's like, wait, but bears, they eat meat and vegetables and shit. They eat anything. And then earlier in the book, she compares her dad to a bear as well. So it's like, oh my God, she sees her dad as like all consuming. Like, wow, her dad is fucking toxic to her. And naturally, she's the oldest child. So she would, in a toxic household, try to be the peacekeeper and the mediator and like try to keep everything in line because clearly her parents aren't capable of doing that. How do I know that that's the situation at hand? Not from firsthand experience as an older child in a toxic household. Definitely not that. Anywho, we're moving on from Ginger and her horrible family to kind of the setting of the book. There's like I said, they kind of find themselves in this like magical forest. It's almost like Wonderland from Alice in Wonderland. There were a lot of things in this book that I was like, that reminds me of this other piece of media. Some of them which had not even come out yet. And so yeah, this reminded me of Wonderland from Alice in Wonderland, where she's just like, she's in this world of like mysticism and really cool shit. She sees a bunch of like giant plants and weird trees and like freaky animals and things like that. And I compared that to this book that I read earlier this year called Imaginary Friend by Stephen Chbosky, who also wrote The Perks of Being a Wallflower. Ooh. If you guys have not, okay, you can say that you've seen The Perks of Being a Wallflower. That is one of the best book to film adaptations I've ever seen. And you're so right for that, because Stephen Chbosky, the author of the book, also directed the movie. So he did a good job with his own work. But if you haven't read that book, please read that fucking book. I have a tattoo from that book. I love it so much. That book is, ooh. It just has so many more fucked up details that he left out of the movie because of how fucked up they are. And it's just so good. It's so fucking good. Read that book. Read The Perks of Being a Wallflower. But anyways, this reminded anyways, The Beast from the East reminded me of his second book that just came out recently, called Imaginary Friend, which is a horror book. And it reminded me of it because the main idea is like a kid finding himself in an alternate universe. So, and it's just kind of happens like suddenly. And yeah, suddenly they're just in another world. And as I mentioned earlier, when they enter this Wonderland-esque forest that doesn't really have a name, Pat bolts. Pat is he's a runner, he's a track star. He just bolts as soon as they see these fucking scary animals and these beasts. He's just out of there. And it's like, okay, bye. Like, the fuck? He's a runner, he's a track star. Holy shit. And yeah, he's just gone. So then he basically leaves his sister and twin brother to just like figure it out on their own. Fucking Roadrunner took off. And now these two kids are just on their own. And Nat and Ginger end up encountering the giant beast that Pat ran away from because he's a little piss bitch. And yeah, so they encounter these beasts. They're like, oh my God, they're going to eat us. And then they find out the beasts can speak, and they speak English. It's so weird. They're very like, Nat points out, the 10-year-old points out, like, they speak our language? What the fuck? But yeah, these beasts speak English, and they basically force these kids to play a game of survival tag with them. It's like tag meets the Hunger Games meets like, I don't even fucking know. It is so weird. And like I said, the point of the game is that they get eaten if they lose the game before sundown. And the way to lose the game is to not be able to tag one of the beasts. And that sounds pretty fucking strange. And then, okay, so I'll state this. The person that is deemed it is also like given the title of the beast from the east. So the person who is it in the game is actually the beast from the east. The beasts in this scenario, I take it, are not the namesake of the book, and we'll get into that later. But yeah, it's very like, the way the game is described is very Coraline-esque, when Coraline from the movie and the book, when she is playing the other mother's game to find the children's ghost eyes. It's very like vague clues and instructions, and it's super dangerous. And she's just like, I guess you can sew buttons into my eyes, Mom. But yeah, so in this instance too, Ginger and Nat are barely learning the rules. The beasts are not like, this is how you play. The beasts are like, you know how to play. You're fucking dumb. What are you doing? You know how to play this game. And they're like, no, we fucking don't. Please tell us the rules or we don't want to play. And they're like, you're playing. You know how to play. Quit acting brand new. Who is behind Peppermint? Why are y'all acting brand new? And to the point, they are so vague about the instructions of this game that it almost feels like completely made up. And there's like, oh, my picture. Let's move on to the picture quick before I get distracted any further. So one of the beasts is named Fleg. There's Fleg, Spork, and Glebe. Those are their names. Those are their names. Spork. Oh my god. And he's supposed to be like the intimidating one. He's like missing an eye or some shit. And it's like, your mom named you after a stupid utensil. Sporks are so dumb. Who the fuck invented sporks and what are they for? Oh, I'm having stew. So I guess in terms to eat stew, I need to kind of poke into something and kind of be able to hold a liquid with one utensil. No, girl, just use a spoon. But yeah, we move on to my picture. I've drawn an image here of Fleg because he's kind of the leader who does most of the talking and the attacking in the book. And I found that the description of the beasts in the book is not like this on the cover. This is not what they fucking look like. So I don't know what author created the cover for this book, but he did not read it. He did not read the fine print. So, and I'm not saying that I had an accurate depiction of Fleg either, but I do recall them saying that the beasts at least have snouts and they have kind of pointy heads. So I tried to depict that. And here we have Fleg reaching his hand out, his red hand specifically, and he says, "You're it, Flop." That's what he says to Ginger. He tags Ginger, and she's the Beast of the East for the book, and she's trying to tag one of them. But yeah, so that's the picture of the day of Fleg. So there are like all these complicated rules to the game that the kids are not very clearly told about until they encounter the beasts so many times in this book, and each time it's like they learn a new rule to the game that they're like, I don't know what the fuck is going on. I don't know what's happening. It feels like I'm watching Girl Interrupted for the first time. I just like don't know what the fuck is happening here. But they find out there's like so many extra points and things that they can get in dire circumstances and like just different situations they find themselves in. So I've like made a list of just some of them. So there's something called snake eyes. I'm going to elaborate on all of these in just a minute. And there's rules that are referred to as snake eyes, made in the shade, Nubloff colors. I don't know what the fuck that means. Free lunch squares. There is a classic clone, and the beasts are actually able to pause the game whenever they fucking want. So you can run there's a couple times she runs up, tags them. They're like, I timed out. I paused the game. And she's like, what the fuck, bro? It's literally elementary schoolers playing a fucking game of anything, just making up their own rules to the point that it is downright infuriating. Ooh, I just got angry for a second because, how fucking childish. And that also gets into what I'm going to talk about later. So basically, they're in a magical forest. They're trying to play this awful game. And that would be so boring if there weren't other minor conflicts that are also like major conflicts throughout the book for these actual children. So I've made a list for myself of some of the things, actually most of the things that they encounter in this magical forest while trying to tag beasts in a life-threatening game. So at one point, Ginger and Nat find themselves getting coiled, their bodies completely wrapped up in what they think initially are vines on trees, but are actually snakes. And the snakes almost bite them. And while the snakes are coiling up on them, like it very descriptively says that they are like covering their bodies. And I think that is so fucking weird and gross. There's some things I'm reading into that now that I didn't even read into yesterday that I'm like, I don't like that. No, not at all. They're getting coiled by snakes, and that's where the extra points called snake eyes come from. Apparently, doing that, like encountering that, gets you some extra points in this not point system game. I don't know. And Fleg shows up and explains that, and then says, like, if you let it bite you, it's more. And she's like, good God, I'm not fucking doing that. So then Fleg, weird shit. Fleg the beast tickles the snakes. Ew, I hate that. I hate that. I hate it. Ew. He. I hate that. That's so fucking weird. He tickles the snake so that it unravels from this child's fucking body. And then they go away. And then he disappears again. What the fuck was R.L. Stine on when he wrote this book? I need to do a deep dive into that, because what kind of crack cocaine heroin addiction was he struggling with when he wrote about a beast tickling a snake that is wrapping around a child's entire fucking body? I hate that. Ugh. Anyways, something else they encounter, living trees. There is a part where Nat, as I mentioned earlier, he's able to climb up trees really high. So he's like, I'm going to climb up a tree. I'm going to find where the beasts are, and I'll let you know, and you can go tag them. So he climbs up this tree. Hey, surprise, the tree is alive, and its branches are actually fucking arms. And the tree, like, eats her brother. Literally eats her brother. And, like, swallows him in the trunk. And then Ginger, innovative, stupid ass little Ginger, is like, oh my God, the snakes were ticklish, so a tree must be ticklish too. And then she goes up, and branches are literally swatting her away while it's eating her brother. This book was crazy. This book was fucking crazy. It swats her away, and she comes back, and she's like ducking under branches and shit, and she tickles the shit out of this tree so that it basically vomits her brother up, and they escape. This book was crazy. This book was insane. I don't know what the fuck is going on here. Later in the book, they approach a giant fucking rock, and I don't remember why. I don't know if there was like a beast hidden behind it or something. There's a hole in this rock, and Nat decides that he is now a gay man, and he shoves his whole hand and arm inside the hole of this rock. Oh, what was this book? And then a bunch of smoke starts coming out of the rock, and the beasts show up, and they're like, that was the penalty rock. The penalty rock says, a penalty rock? What the fuck does that mean? So in turn, Nat, tree climbing high heights loving Nat, is stolen by the beasts and brought to some ravine or something, and is placed inside a penalty cage. And the only way for him to get out of this penalty cage, if he so wishes to, is to like eat a tarantula or something. What is this book? What is this book? This book was so weird. So yeah, that's the only way he can get out. And so Ginger's like, oh my God, I have to go win this game, or else they're going to eat my brother too. Because that's also a rule. If you're in the penalty cage and the person loses the game, you both get eaten. Of course. So she's like, I have to go win this game. And so there's another part. This book was fucking exhausting. She approaches another beast, and right when she's about to come up and tag him, she's like so close. She's like, ooh, 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 ooh. She's like, oh, I'm so close. Ooh, 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 ooh. I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna get you. She's like, I'm gonna touch you, and she plummets into a hole. She plummets into a fucking hole in the ground, and surprise, this hole is one of the free lunch squares that I mentioned earlier. And in the beginning of the book, when they are learning in quotes the rules of the game, they also said, hey, there's also random squares amongst the jungle in on the ground, and if you're standing in one of those squares and we find you, that means we can eat you. You're free lunch. Like, of course. Why wouldn't that happen? So, guess what? The bottom of this fucking pit is a free lunch square. However, this is where the rule made in the shade comes in, because right when they're about to fucking eat her, the sun gets covered by clouds and they're in a shaded area. So they're like, oh shit, we found you in a shaded area. So that means we can't eat you. This is a free pass, but you can only do this once. Oh, this book was exhausting. This book was so emotionally exhausting to experience. Oh, my earbud fell out. Hold on. So then they raise the ground back to ground level so they can escape and she can continue playing the game. Like, what the fuck are we doing? What are we doing? Going back to Nubloff colors, there's also just a point that like she keeps falling down. Ginger keeps falling and like her hand keeps landing in random shit or like on trees, and they turn her hand different colors. Like she hits a tree and it turns her hand orange. She falls on some weird plant, it turns her hand blue and shit. And they're like staining her hand or something, and at one point they're about to eat her and they see colors on her hand. They're like, Nubloff colors, that's a freebie, we're not gonna eat you. Like, oh my fucking god, please just write the instructions down on a piece of paper for this 12-year-old girl. And for me, I'm so confused. I'm 23 and I don't understand this game. Anywho, so eventually Ginger's in the woods. It's getting close to sundown. Nat manages to escape his penalty cage. He's like, the wood in the floor was kind of weak, so I got out of it and I ran. So they meet up again, and it's almost sundown. The beasts hear them and they're like running, and they encounter this creature who has the body of a German shepherd and the head of a squirrel, of course. And the squirrel is like, go in this cave. This is the hiding cave. Of course there's a hiding cave behind some vines or something. And it's like, go in here. They are not going to find you. I will distract them. You can only use this once, but go in here now and they won't find you. So they go in this cave, and this cave, the beasts come, the dog creatures, like, they're not here. Sorry. Meanwhile, while that's happening, this cave, they learn, is also a hiding cave specifically for bugs, for like millions of fucking bugs. So these kids are sitting in this hiding cave being covered in insects, and it talks about them flying into her ear and shit, and she wants to scream, but she doesn't want to get eaten by the beasts. What is this book? What the fuck was this book? And then there's I'm exhausted talking about this. We're almost at the end though, I promise. They then get caught. Surprise, they don't win the game for some reason, and they get caught, and the beasts are about to eat them. So then they also almost find themselves the entree of a beast barbecue. They literally boil like gourd juice in front of them as broth, and they are about to be put into a fucking barbecue. Before I move on to more of that, I would also just like to say the last awful thing that they encounter in this jungle and along this journey is fucking trauma. Like, what the fuck have these kids gone through? These kids are going to need some serious fucking therapy. Maybe like shock therapy. They're going to need some Clockwork Orange therapy. Like, holy shit. These poor children. This is the only time in a Goosebumps book that I feel like I will ever root for the children and not the monsters, because the monsters piss me off. But yeah, so the ending. Pat, stupid ass fucking Pat, decides to show up. And he's like, I don't believe you. And then instantly sees the beasts talking and is like, I believe you. They all get captured. They're all about to get eaten. But then the beasts see both Nat and Pat together for the first time. This is where Pat running away in the beginning is important, because now they're both together for the first time. And the beasts are like, oh my God, you did a classic clone. And by doing that, the beasts are like, oh, you're level 3 players? You guys are experts at this game. We don't even know how to do a classic clone. We're just level 1 players. We're beginners. And they're like, what? And they're like, yeah, that's why we can only play during the daytime, because we're level 1 players. So since you're level 3 players and you're experts, you can go. Like, we will release you. And they let the kids go. And they point them down the path to freedom. So the kids are like, oh, thank fucking God. And they're like going down this path to get home. And they're like running and they're happy and they're thinking about reuniting with their mom and dad. And plot twist, the last page of the book, plot twist, another beast crosses their path. And they say, no, we're level 3 players. So we can't play with you. And he's like, oh my God, I'm a level 3 player too. You're it. That's how the book ends. The kids don't even get to reunite with their parents or make it out of the jungle. They are just trapped in never-ending games of whatever the fucking game is. Sorry, I need a minute. This book was exhausting. This book was so fucking exhausting. But that's the book. That's the fucking book. And I'm so distressed. I'm so distressed for these children. And I believe that the beasts in this book, kind of trying to compare it to other books, because this was so wildly different than the other books I've read so far. When I compare this book to the other books that I've read so far and the other stories in the Goosebumps series that I'm aware of, I think that the beasts in this book would be a wonderful group of Supreme Court justices in the Goosebumps government. Bringing it full circle, we established in the first episode that Carly Beth would be a great president. Last episode, we established that Count Nightwing would be a wonderful vice president, and the beasts from this book would be a significantly great group of Supreme Court justices in this Goosebumps government of absolute fucking bullshit and tyranny. Like, oh my God, they would follow the legacy of the horrible president and vice president almost perfectly. And they also would just live up to the legacy of the real U.S. fucking justice system and Supreme Court. They don't explain the stupid fucking rules of their game to anyone, yet they make people face drastic consequences if those people don't perform exactly how they're expected to, which is just in favor of the people in charge. So that's a pretty perfect parallel. And then kind of going back, I find it so interesting that like these beasts are never established that like they are the beasts from the East. The person who is it in this game is the beast from the East. And I think it's so interesting to name the book The Beast from the East after the victim of the story, the person whose life is at fucking stake for the entire time, the person who is deemed the beast from the East in this stupid game, rather than naming it more traditionally like the other Goosebumps books after the actual antagonist or the actual like setting that kind of causes all this chaos, or the desires of the antagonists in the book. Like most of the other books, you have the Haunted Mask, that's named after the main antagonist, the main problem and conflict of the book. You have Beware the Snowman, that's about the antagonist of the book. You have Vampire Breath, that is the object of desire for the antagonist of the book. This is literally named after the victim of the book, literally after the person who is trying to escape the agony that they are forced into in this book. I find that so interesting. And it's almost that like the victim of the book is like gaslit into believing that they are the villain by the actual villain. The beasts are like, you're the beast from the East. They really have the power over this person because they know all the fucking rules to the game. They're not telling this child the rules to their stupid fucking game, and they are still like, you're the villain, when really she's the victim of extreme manipulation and gaslighting. This is where I start to think that I really overanalyze this book, but I also made really good connections to this book. Because like the whole point of me wanting to do this is that someday I can like, just for my own like kind of preservation of my own like inner child and age regressing, like I also want to be able to share these books with like my children someday and be able to have these conversations with my children someday of like, this is like important literature for more reasons than just that it's a classic scary book series. There are also things you can genuinely unpack from these books. As stupid as that fucking sounds, why does it sound stupid when we unpack things like that in children's books and not classic literature? What's the fucking difference in unpacking details, very minor details, but making something of them, whether it was intentional or not on the author's part, in a children's book versus a book like The Great Gatsby, To Kill a Mockingbird? What's the difference? They're all works of literature. Literature is supposed to influence everybody. Children's books are not just written to be entertaining. They can have deeper meanings too. And that kind of concludes my review of this book. I'm going to do some more deep diving during the numbers. But with that being said, let's move on to the numbers of this book. So, editing Zaebian, pop up the rubric here. You know the routine. I need some more coffee before I do this. My incense stick is burnt out, which means I've either been talking for far too long or that was a shitty incense stick, or both. Twink. Okay. So let's start with the spookiness of the concept of this book. Weirdly, as much as this book freaked me the fuck out, I gave it the spookiness of the concept a 2 out of 5. To be realistic, this is kind of a tired plot line. There are kids getting lost into another world, and they run into an intimidating or dangerous conflict, and they must fulfill this duty in order to be able to leave. I could name like 3 different stories off the top of my head that are exactly the same way, most prominently Alice in Wonderland. Like, and maybe Charlie and the Chocolate Factory even. Like, there's so many like strings you could pull to be like, that's like this, that's like this, that's like this. So it's kind of a tired plot line. It's not the most creative. The way that it was spun is pretty creative though, so it's not like he just was lazy and came up with something that other people have created. So that's why it gets 2 out of 5, not a lower score, but the creativity could have been upped a little bit. Now, as far as the villain in the story, I gave the beasts in this story, so Flegg, Spork, and Glebe. What the fuck? I will never get over the names of those characters. I gave them a 4 out of 5. And I said that they're not necessarily the scariest villains in terms of their attitudes, because they're actually kind of like playful and childlike compared to other villains that we've read so far. But what's really scary is the power that they hold over the lives of these children. That's what makes them scary. And the fact that they are constantly just a threat looming over these kids' heads of like, we're going to eat you. No, we're not. We're going to eat you. No, we're not. Actually, just kidding. You're in the shade, so we're not going to fucking eat you right now. We'll eat you later. Like, that's horrifying. That is so fucking scary. To these kids who just want to get back home to their mom and dad. I feel so bad for these kids. Like, so yeah, that's fucking scary. But also the fact that they are not just completely evil. Like, their attitude is playful and communicates with them. And like, there's that weird dynamic. They're not completely fucking evil all around. Mostly, but not all around. So that's why they only get 4.5 or 4 out of 5. Sorry. So now we move on to the reader's tolerance of the protagonist. Even though Nat and Pat are a very like prominent part of the book, mostly Nat, I'm not including him as a protagonist because there are sections of the book where we don't see him for quite a bit. The book is from Ginger's perspective, and she is a couple of times left alone to get through this thing that she's going through. So I'm just rating this on Ginger and not her brothers, unfortunately. If I were rating Nat as the protagonist, this would be different. But I give Ginger a 2.75 out of 5. She was, as we discussed earlier, circumstantially because of her family, a liar. And she's the main reason that her and her brothers found themselves in this predicament. Sure, her dad, her toxic fucking dad, is the one who's like, go get lost in the woods. And so they did, but then it's her saying, yeah, this is the right way. Yeah, we're going the right way. We're going to get back. Like, that's what got them fucking lost. And that's what got them in this jungle. And that's what got them in this whole situation. So she doesn't make great decisions. She doesn't really think about tricks or consequences of her actions that could be pulled in this jungle. She's just in like panicky flight mode, which I cannot blame her. But that is a weakness on her part as the protagonist in terms of figuring out how to resolve the conflict of the book. But she does prove to be determined. And she does not just complain about everything. She's always trying to figure out, how do we get out of this situation that I found myself in? So she's not completely flawed, but she's not great. She's still not a great protagonist. She's just kind of annoying. But I don't know. So I gave her 2.75 out of 5. Sorry, my brain is just very quickly shutting down because this book was a lot for me. Okay. Moving on to the plot twists and resolution of the book, I gave it a 3 out of 5. I said it is jarring to not have a quote unquote happy ending in a Goosebumps book. Like, let's compare it to The Haunted Mask. Carly Beth's resolution was finished, and then it ended on a plot twist because there's a sequel to that book. Beware the Snowman, she's reunited with her dad. Vampire Breath, he's a vampire, but then his friend turns into a werewolf or something. Like, there's always a reuniting. There's always a moment of like, okay. And I guess that kind of happened in this book too, but they don't ever have like a final, like, okay, everything's totally fine before something else happens. These kids are like on their way to that kind of sigh of relief before like something interjects and their story is not really over. So you would at least expect them to make it out and reunite with their parents before another conflict arises by the end of the book to make it more suspenseful. Like the idea that they remain in the forest, it's not totally unexpected. And at this point, as far as how hard it is for them to finish the game, is almost anticipated that they would just stay there, to the point that by the end of the book, when you read what actually happens, myself as a reader, I was like, of course, why would these kids be able to catch a break? Like, why wouldn't this happen? Like, of course, this just makes, like, I'm not surprised that it happened, but I am surprised by what happened, I guess. I don't know. So then we move on to the underlying messages and social commentary. So as we all know, the rating scale is out of 5. And for the first time in Things That Go Bump history, I decided to give one of the pieces of criteria a score above the maximum that they can get. So for underlying messages and social commentary, I gave it 5.25 out of 5. Because of the things that I kind of mentioned earlier, as far as just the representation of the beasts, comparing them to kind of people who are in charge of our country, I really just think that there is a serious commentary in this book on the patriarchy and the government and the world that we live in today. Even though this was written, let's look up really quick what year this was written. I know it was in the 90s because that's when all these were written pretty much. This book does not have a publication date. 1996. There we go. So this book was written almost 30 years ago, but the events of this fictional story in a children's book, they still translate to events taking place today in America, to be quite real, when it comes to human rights, such as trans rights and women's rights and everyone's rights to their own bodily autonomy. And also the economy in general. The people who are in charge want to give us a list of fucking rules to follow Well, actually, they don't want to give it to us. They want to make a list of rules for us to follow and not give them to us and just expect us to be able to know how to follow them. And if we don't follow them, we get punished for it. And surprise, the rules are completely unfair and not in favor of anyone other than the people who are making them. And that is just so fucking infuriating to it. And it's so weird that you can have a conversation like this, like I mentioned earlier, based on a fictional children's book about kids getting chased by monsters through a jungle. Like, they are trying so hard. And I think that translates to us too. Like, everyone tries so hard to just make it. And the people who are in charge of us and the people who make rules for us make it so hard for us to ever meet up to any sort of societal expectation that's put on our shoulders. And that is so, as someone who really does not come from really any place of like extreme privilege in terms of like wealth, that is so infuriating. And also as someone who is a part of like a minority group, as being a part of the LGBT community, which is like constantly having its rights threatened for no fucking reason in this society, it is so infuriating that there are constantly fucking 80-year-old men who are freezing up on a stand at a press conference telling me how I can and cannot live. That is fucking infuriating. That is fucking ridiculous, and it should not be fucking happening so that rich white men can continue to live rich and white and with privilege that no one else gets to fucking have. That should not happen. And I really do think that, like, to just like kind of solidify that this is a good comparison of like these beasts in this book to government officials today. I kind of made like, this is basically, you could put this in the perspective of either one of those two antagonists and it would apply to both of them almost perfectly. So like, these are actually the rules now, and you have to follow them because we say so. And you're also the center of our own game, where we, one, force you to participate and obey the rules that we are not going to explain to you. Two, we're going to avoid you at all costs, regardless of your opinion on the matter. And three, we come after you if you break the rules. And at the end of the day, we end your life if you lose the game. We make everything fucking miserable for you. That's why I think literature is important. For kids and adults, from any sort of genre, from any sort of reading lexile, that's why I think literature is important. And I can still be a college dropout of a literature major and have these opinions. Okay. Lastly, moving back onto the rubric, sorry to get real there, but also this is my platform and I have opinions, and that's my opinion. So moving on to the last part of the criteria, did I get goosebumps from this book? I kind of did. I'm not gonna lie. In the beginning, when it was describing the beasts and shit, and just like kind of how scary they were, I was like, ooh, that's spooky. I don't like that. So I did kind of get goosebumps. So congratulations, Beasts from the East. You are the second book to receive the extra advantage of half a point to your total score. So that's the criteria, or that's my ratings for this book. When we add all those up and find the average score, it comes to 3.5 out of 5. I was disappointed by how low that score was initially, but then I was like, just because I respect the social commentary in this book so much does not mean that the plot was that creative, that Ginger was any more tolerable to the point that I should give it any more points. And I also gave it an extra half point advantage too. So like, it does not need more. And then when we move over to the McCandy Library's official rating of the 62 Goosebumps books, that puts Beast from the East at second place, knocking down Beware the Snowman and Haunted Mask a bit, and Vampire Breath still takes the cake for first place, which I think is fair. I think that one is a more well-crafted children's horror book. So yeah, that's it. That's my review on The Beast from the East, number 43 in the original Goosebumps series. thank you for watching this. Thank you for listening to me rant and also talk about how the government sucks and how this book was fucking crazy. If you have not read this book, even if you are like, even if I spoiled the entire thing for you, you should read it. It's fucking nuts. So that's it. That's it from me. Sorry that this was a really long episode. I introduced a whole new segment and I went on a rant that ended up being longer than I expected. And that's it. If you're watching this on YouTube, thank you for watching this on YouTube. Oh, my earbud fell out again. So sorry. If you're watching this on YouTube, leave me a like and subscribe to my channel so that you can get notified and see whenever I upload new episodes of the podcast every Tuesday of every week, unless I say otherwise. You can give me a comment. Let me know any of your thoughts on anything I talked about in this episode. Let me know what you think. And if you're listening to it, leave me a rating on whatever platform you're on. I think I'm on my trailer came out since the last time I recorded this. So I know that I'm on Castbox and Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, the Linktree and the links to all of those if you want to listen to it instead of watch it or vice versa. Every link to the podcast is in the description of this video or of this episode. If you want to follow my own social medias or if you want to support my small art business called wherefore.art.thou by Z, all the links that you need are in the description as well. And that's pretty much it. I'm exhausted now. I might have to take a nap. But until next time, keep it loosey and stay goosey. And we'll see you next week on Halloween. Ooh. All right. Peace out.